territorial communities. We have around 20 associated partners representing different levels of communities, municipality, regional establishments, tourism offices, state services, and other partners, such as the MetPan network we are lucky enough to have on the project, and also the outermost regions conference. The Côte d'Azur is part of this network of partners, and the main expectations from the project: 8 action plans tested on pilot sites, a toolbox that can be transferred for the management of Posidonia beaches in the Mediterranean, political recommendations and governance tools, a commitment charter, which we will explain further in a moment. And the goal is to have a network of committed stakeholders around the Mediterranean. In the Sud region, what did we try to do specifically as part of the project? Our main objectives, we thought, okay, if we handle the question around management of banquettes, what is interesting to us? Changing practices, raising awareness and changing representations, and gather the stakeholders as a network. So these are definitely the issues that we are covering today in this conference. So changing practices, who is impacted? The managers, so coastline area managers in general. And how? Well, by acting on pilot sites based on the building of methodology guides and recommendations drafted with all the partners on Mediterranean level to change practices, and also to support people with trainings, for instance, as part of the CNFPT, our training institutions for the territorial communities. The objective is to change behaviors, and this targets all beach stakeholders, tourists, elected representatives, store owners, managers, young people. So we will target all the stakeholders. How is that done? Through awareness raising actions, information and communication projects, tools and devices, innovative tools and device nudges, for instance, and also through a participative approach. So everybody can act. I can hear some background noise. Finally, gathering stakeholders. Who? Public decision makers, citizens, stakeholders, and economical stakeholders. This is a mediation between the society and science. So how to do that? We want to gather people around an existing European label, the Blue Pavilion, and through different tools, such as the development of a commitment charter with action forms. Finally, by creating a Mediterranean stakeholders network, and the conference today aims at starting the foundations of a potential coastline managers network in the Mediterranean. To summarize, our project articulates around 10 flagship actions. You have further details on the slide now, but I would like to insist on what really motivated us in participating was working on this social acceptability, which is to us the fundamental bias. In order to do so with Lashmi, we are starting a think tank that will help us develop innovative communication and awareness raising tools. We also started educational actions with students from lycée in France. And by the end of the summer, we will start working with our partners on drafting this commitment charter. The specificity of the charter is that it will come with action forms saying, okay, as a community, I am committed, and the first step will be such and such and such action. An economical stakeholder can say, I am going to welcome an exhibition in my restaurant, for example. So that's the idea of the commitment charter, gathering all stakeholders and helping us creating this Mediterranean stakeholders network. We hope to meet in the fall of 2021, early 2022, by pulling together the stakeholders, but we will see depending on the health situation. To conclude, we wanted to share with you the different levers, fundamental levers that will help us succeed in the implementation of a peaceful relationship in the management of land and sea. So through dialogue, confronting points of views and opinions, remaining humble, and working with learning communities. And the COVID crisis showed it too. There is no knowing entity. We have managers, we have scientifics, but we need to learn together and experiment. So we want to keep that mindset. Finally, work on social acceptability. The work on social acceptability forces us to get a new tone. I like this quote, I'm not sure who said it. You don't convince a development model. So we should stop with the model of the Caribbean beaches in the South. We must be proud of our Mediterranean character and change that model. That's the mindset that we have for the POSBMed2 project, and we wanted to share it with you today. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open to answer any question now. Any question in the chat? Not yet. Perfect. So we can now, after presenting the POSBMed2 project and its targets in the Sud region, we can now move on to the Sardinia region presentation. Hello, everyone. We happily take part in this conference today. It's an opportunity to hear very interesting experiences. So I am now going to share my screen with you. Can you see something now? Not yet. Okay, give me a moment then. How about now? Yes. So we work in synergy with the autonomous region of Sardinia and with the Criteria company. Our experience on the use of this type of project started with the Marigo project, which started in October 2020. The topic is the reopening of photo monitoring systems in the beach of Poeto de Caligari. So we started the project on the beach of Poeto. You can see the picture on the left, which is located between Cagliari and Quartu Sant'Elena in southern Sardinia. The main objective is to understand the changes on the coastline, on the shore, with a photo monitoring system. This is part of the Marigot project, which aims at reopening two existing facilities that were created around 2 years ago. This was part of the REMAR project, a network of a cooperation between France and Italy from 2007 to 2017. As part of the activities, as part of a call for tender for an engineering company, we restored and rehabilitated the existing facility with an update of the software and hardware to implement a simple and cheap photo monitoring system. As you can see on the pictures, the installation is made of 4 cameras in 2 stations positioned along the beach, which allows monitoring of around 3 kilometers of shore. Here you can see a few pictures from the top of the beach. This is the Poeto beach from Cagliari. This is called Sella di Diavolo. The Poeto beach as seen from Quarto Sant'Elena. And the Poeto beach onto Quarto Sant'Elena. This is the system, the photo monitoring system, which is based on 4 cameras located in waterproof areas, and the hardware and software systems are fed by a solar panel, which is managed remotely over Wi-Fi. The storing and image capture system is managed remotely and works on this system. Communication of the peripheral systems, which is managed through an SSH protocol. So the system is a Raspberry Pi 4 system in the Phyton IT system. Management of the images is done through a cloud system connection, Amazon Web Service. The images are downloaded onto the computer through the AWS system in the command line. Displaying the meteorological data, sharing and downloading are available through a business prime system called Davis. So with regards to this monitoring system, the pros are a very simple system where images can be captured for the assessment of morphological system of the submerged beaches with the following aspects. Physiographical evolution changes, morphological evolution of the beach against the different phenomena, and the waves onto the beach. The system is here to analyze the daily position in order to measure
Et on a
its
différentes
spatial
échelles temporelles à court
evolution, and we
terme,
have several
quotidiennement,
timing
selon les
states.
différentes conditions météorologiques. À moyen terme,
In the midterm, and in the long term, over years. This is a way to review the tendency as well, and this is also due to a meteorological center. Rectification procedures are available on screen through the pixels classification, multi-time observation, multiple analysis, and ultimately urban planning and works on erosion. Acquisition processes are on screen as well. We have different steps. Photo surveillance systems can build historical banks of images, which can be gained thanks to mediated images. That's a series of images taken in a short timing, 30 photos every hour. The image is called a Timex image, a calibrated image between the 30 images. The Timex images are tracked by a auto-reflectification, and finally, the treatment of the image aims at defining the position of the line through a classification pixels process. These pixels are broken down between submerged land and sea, which gets us an immediate vision of the line and helps recognize the shoreline. On the left, you can see the main dots with the GPS. We see the auto rectification of the image. Here you can see all the GPS dots, and ultimately you can see the Timex image. We can work on the calibration of the GPS coordinates, which must be transferred as camera coordinates, that is pixels. We also talk about final results. The coast system aims at understanding the evolutive process of the beach itself and this different methodology with regards to time scale. As we said, there is short term, mid-term, and long term. And as you can see on the image on the left, there are three lines: blue, black, and yellow. And the Timex images taken every day from 9 to 8 with a 2 minutes timing. Every time it is necessary to evaluate the hydrodynamic conditions of the previous day in order to choose the right comparable images. Future improvement can lead to a multi-timing comparison, and in the image, the erosive trend of the Poeto beach is visible. We can see that the beach withdrew by 40 meters since 2008 until today, and by 6 meters since 2016. You can see the yellow line from 2008, the Timex black line from 2016, and the shoreline from 2020. This seems to suggest that the geomorphological sedimentary works from 2004 has not reblocked yet. Of course, it's not as fast. Still on screen, on the left of the screen, you can see the orthographied picture and elevated picture for the identification of the shoreline. And on the right, there is also a detail within the frame, which is the comparison between the extrapolated shoreline from the ortho-rectified image, the blue one, which is directly identified in the field with the GPS, which is a red line. So you can see there is very little difference. So the system seems to be working. In Sardinia, we have several projects as part of the POSB-MED, which involves protected marine areas. 4 photo monitoring systems will be installed. We have the Villa Simius municipality. You can see on the picture the red circle on the south. Protected area of Prato Carbonara with the Campulongo and Istraias beaches. We also have the Penisola del Sinis Isola di Mal di Ventre, which is also a marine protected area with the San Giovanni di Sinis and Marie Hermi beach. I would also like to add that there is a lot of potential in this project. We can see here that there is a surveillance of the variation of the beach's profile, as I said, surveillance of the sedimented biomass volume, so that this is the Posidonia banquettes, surveillance of the increase of waves on the submerged beach, depending on the weather conditions, and a way to forecast potential coast floodings, and anthropic load surveillance on the beach. I would also like to add that in the protected area where we have the experiment going on for this project, we just try to experiment management methods for Posidonia. So this conference is very interesting to us. This is it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this presentation. Are there any questions? And let me just have a look at the chat. Are there any questions in the chat? I can't see any. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Maybe this will come later. Yes, maybe there'll be questions later. I imagine people are still digesting not only their lunch, but also the presentation. Thank you very much, Stephanie. I will now need to give the floor to Mr. Moreno from the Balear region. Or the Balearics region, rather. If I could ask for the floor to be given to the Balearics. Mr. Moreno, Balearics region, is this your PowerPoint that we can see? This will be a presentation on integrated management.
Can you hear me? Are you listening to me? I think there's not noise.
Can you please speak a little bit louder? But yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes,
okay.
You can start.
Okay, good afternoon. Let's have a look at what we are doing in the Balearic region. It's a pleasure for me to present this project, which is a tool for integrated management of Posidonia. We are going to talk more, we are going to focus it on banquettes, but it's also made for all the ecosystem, also the seagrass and all the Posidonia-like species. Well, this is, I'm part of the government of the Balearic region. We work for the Wildlife Protection Service, which is biodiversity. And so we are taking care, we have the responsibilities of the conservation of biodiversity and of protected species. Let me show you some numbers that will explain why are we talking about this. This is where we are, the Balearic Islands, Mallorca, Menorca, Ibiza, and Formentera. The surface is 5,000 square kilometers, but this is important. The length of the coastline is 1,500, almost 500 kilometers of coast. We have 1,200,000 inhabitants, well, a lot of hotels. We have, in 2019, of course, not now, 16.5 million tourists, which is a a lot. We have a number of mooring buoys of 22,000. Our area of Posidonia meadows are almost 633 square kilometers, and we have cataloged a number of beaches of 583 in all the autonomous region. So as a resume, what do we have? We do have a lot of Posidonia, the best and the biggest quantity of Posidonia in all the regions, the Mediterranean regions of Spain, Catalonia, Valencia, Murcia, Andalusia, and Balearic. In the 5 regions, we have almost the 50% of the Posidonia meadows, and we have a big number of boats coming in summer, and a big number of tourists that wants to share the beaches with us. So we have a lot of tourism, we have a lot of natural capital, so we have to do something for managing. What is the legislation in Spain for this? Well, we do have the Habitat Directive, that the regulation of protection of Posidonia. I mean, we do have the Habitat Directive, like you. In 2007, the state law of natural heritage changes the directive into the national legislation. This law said that there must be a list of protected species and a catalogue of threatened species. This is made in 2011, and in this year, in this catalogue, the Posidonia is included at protected species, just as a species. That means that is the same protection, for example, that an osprey or that turtle or something like this. Okay, but which is the difference is important. And then in the Balearic Island, we developed in 2018 a regional decree. This is also only for the region, for the conservation of Posidonia in the Balearic Island. Why a special decree? Why did we have to go further? We had to go to another step. Well, there was a need to interpret the different possibilities that the current normative allows. Think that in this directive, the state law and the state decree of protected species, the restriction for managing protected species, even the remains, are so high that depending on how you interpret it, there are many things that can be allowed and can be forbidden. So especially with anchoring, especially with management of the beaches, of the banquettes. So we wanted to give to provide legal security both to the users, I mean the boat owners, the touristic, the local administration, the service concessionaires and the operators, and also to the authorities in charge of enforcing the legislation. That means us and the rangers of the autonomous region, the environmental rangers, and also the policy of the civil guards. The target, of course, is to protect Posidonia meadows alive and the sandy beaches and dune ecosystem. I mean, managed banquettes, making it compatible with touristic uses. Why? Because we live from the tourists. We need the tourists to live. So how it is organized? This is the decree. Now we are talking about the Posidonia beaches, the banquets managed. There are many questions that have to be answered, and the decree gives the answer, and in a high level of legislation. Who has to act? Well, we are the ones that authorize it. I mean, the regional government, the environmental regional authority, which is the place where I work. And who is the responsibility? The responsibility is the local authorities, which are, let's say, the owners of the beaches. Yes, so they are the responsible of cleaning, of managing the Posidonia, of taking it out and withdrawing, and all the management of the beaches. So what we have arranged is to give them only one authorization for each municipality for all the beaches and for 4 years. Yes, so we are trying to make the work as simple as possible. Just to give you numbers, this is the number of municipalities, coastal municipalities that are in the Balearic Island: 24 in Mallorca, 8 in Minorca, 5 in Ibiza, and 1 in Formentera. Also, it said where do they have to do the management? For this, the decree classifies the beaches in 3 categories, which is natural beaches without services, which is, let's say, virgin beaches, natural beaches with nothing, no facilities in the beaches, natural beaches with some services, small, not infrastructure big, it's infrastructures, big facilities, but some uses like showers or, let's say, some little facility for the tourists, and urban beaches, which is in this case We take care that the dune system does not exist. So it are beaches that can be managed, let's say, more strongly. Okay. Also, it said when do they have to manage? When do they have to withdraw to take away, or when they can do it, clean the beaches? Well, this depending of the categories. If for the urban beaches, you can do it from the 15th of March, which is now yesterday, till the October the 31st. That you can clean the beaches, you can remove the Posidonia banquettes, and also between in the other beaches, I mean in the natural reserves, from the 1st of May till the 30th of September. The rest of the year you cannot withdraw the Posidonia remains, the banquettes from the beach. How can you do it? Also, the decree tells you it's like a guide of best practice, but with legal level. It says that you can do it by manual methods without any kind of machinery. This is allowed in almost all the beaches, and with the machinery, but it says which kind of machinery. It has to be not heavy, without chains, and also it tells you how you have to access to the beach, how it's recommendable to move in the beach, as just to try to protect all the dune ecosystem and trying to get as less sand as possible. What is it for? Well, for what can be used this Posidonia that is retired for the beach? Is it allowed to use it in traditional uses? In Balearic Island, traditional uses for Posidonia were mainly for farmers, for the cows and for the animals, like bed for livestock, and also it was anciently used like isolation of buildings. So this is one of another use that it's allowed now. It's allowed in some special situation. There was a live project, but was live reusing Posidonia that was made in the island of Formentera, and shows how the Posidonia can be used like very efficiently as isolation for constructions in the Mediterranean. It was, like I told you, used in ancient times. But there's one thing important, that the usage can be non-commercial uses. So in this moment, we don't want people going to the beach to collect Posidonia and sell it. If you want to use it, you can, but you have to do it by your own. You have to collect it by your own, and you cannot take money for this. That's not possible because all the legislation, state and regional, avoids commercial usage with protected species, both alive and both with remains. So in this moment, there is not an exception to that. So no commercial usage are allowed. Another use, what do we withdraw the Posidonia during the summer? Well, of course, or we can put it back after the season for restoration. Priority in natural beaches or beaches which are in recession is priority not to remove the Posidonia during all the year. And if you remove it partially, you have to give it back before the 15th of October of the following month, after the summer. So the Posidonia has to be given back, and we are proud that the municipalities are taking this idea as a level of quality that can be even sold to the tourists. They are giving us a lot of help with that. Talking about erosion, that is the topic that we are talking today. There is a project, a pilot action in this PART2 project, which is led by the IUCN here in Spain, in Malaga, in one place, and it's made in a natural park of Strength and Salobrar de Campos, which is in the south of Mallorca. It's a very, very big beach that is a natural protected area, marine and terrestrial protected area, and there are very big accumulation of Posidonia that has been cleaned during many years because it's a very important touristic place. It's a virgin beach, but many people come there because it's one of the best beaches. And then we have a problem of erosion and also a problem of what to do with this accumulation of Posidonia during all this year. This pilot action try to give some solution and to analyze what is happening there, and will be the model for what we will have to do in the future with other beaches, because we have to, one of the things that the decree said that we have to make is to make a map of impacts and erosion in the different beaches that can make the change in the categories on the catalog of classification of beaches that I spoke before. Also in this project, there are, well, these are the accumulations, some of them are very old. We have just made yesterday an analysis of the vegetation that is in the top, because some of them are colonized by vegetation, but we have seen that it's not important species, so but we are going to allow to remove them. I think when we say we are going to allow, I mean because we are the responsibility of biodiversity, and we are the service that has to do it, and we are going to allow the park authorities to do it. Here you have some aerial photo. Of course, we are doing also with drones, which is the way we are going to work now and in the future. Here you have the analysis that is being doing now about the recession of the beaches, and in 1 year we will have the final results of this project, and we will have just an idea of not only what is happening there in this place, but also what can we do to measure this in the rest of the autonomous region. So what do we have to achieve of today? Just as conclusion, I mean, with this legislation, that is the unique legislation, especially for Posidonia, that we have in Spain, and I mean the other regions, coastal region, are thinking about that, but we have been the first one to approve this legislation. There are two very important steps that we want to achieve. One is with the stakeholders, mainly with the municipalities and the operators, and it's establish and keep communication channels. We have established already, but we're going to keep them because it's basic to have these channels open and have communication with them, because we have a lot of doubts and they also have, and what we have to do is to solve them and do it together, because it's the only way to work. And there's one thing that is, well, we knew it from the beginning, but it's something that we have learned during many years, not only in this Posidonia, but in protected areas, that is that if you give the tools and you help people to do the things well done, they will try to do it. So it's not just forbidding things and putting penalties and do policy. No, it's also to say, give some solution, because if there is a solution, people respond very, very well. And we are really proud about the municipalities of our island, of our region, because they are helping us a lot and they are giving us a lot of information. Well, we need to give and make sure that they know the decree and receive information of what problems do they have and do we have. And the other, let's say, step of pillar of our intention and what we want to achieve is to arrive to this integrated management. We want to prepare a map of areas and actions. We want to prepare, we are doing it now, but we want to close it. We want to prepare a map of impacts and erosion, as I told you yesterday. We want, and we have to, because the decree said that we are the responsible, and we have to give this information to the public and to the managers, I mean to the municipalities. We want to know, and this is the very important thing, what movement and what quantities, which quantity of Posidonia is moving. I mean, dead Posidonia, the banquettes, because there is a big movement, there's a big use in the farms. There is this moving Posidonia around from the north to the south, and we want to know how much and how is it used. The concessionaires, I mean the municipalities, has the compromise of when we give them the authority to operate in the beaches and to clean and withdraw the Posidonia in the beaches, they have the obligation to give us a feedback after the season and tell us, we have taken thousands of tons. You can imagine how much Posidonia is moving, and we said we have been giving the half 50% to the farmers, or the rest have been used for construction, and this part have been returned back to the more natural areas that were needed for passing the winter. And then with this map of movement of Posidonia, maybe we will have to identify the possibility of revising some criteria in the future. That's what I was telling you before, that there's not commercial use of the Posidonia, that maybe in the future we'll have to think about it. But because what will be, let me say, stupid will be to throw the Posidonia in the litter. So or we return it to the beaches, or we'll use it for anything. So if there is enough Posidonia to return, to protect the beaches, that is the main objective, and also possible Posidonia for traditional uses, maybe we will have to think about giving some use to this Posidonia that maybe is left. I mean that it's not necessary to move. But this is something that we don't know now, and in this moment we are not thinking about this in the moment because, as I told you, our legislation does not allow the commercial use of the Posidonia. Well, that's all. Thank you very much. And if you have any question that I can answer, it will be very nice to do it. This is my dog.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jorge. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm just going to scroll through the different comments and questions. We have one question from Francesca Rossi, who's saying that if Posidonia is removed in summer.
So if it is removed.
Yes, removed. Yes, removed. If Posidonia is removed in summer.
Well, there is always some damage in the ecosystem, of course. The most ideal situation will be not removing it. That's what the ecosystem will ask for. The sea remove the Posidonia take it from one side to another. But especially in summer, when the weather is so more normally, with this changing of climate, we are having storms every week. But normally in summer, the weather is the dynamic of the water is lower. Is the best moment to withdraw this Posidonia and remove it. So, as I told you in the beginning, and this is I put it in the law, in the general law, there are some exceptions that can be made for protected species if they are justified for some healthy reasons and social economical reasons. And believe me, the social economical reason, very important in coastal communities like the Balearic Islands, like Sardinia, another thing is the tourism, is the way that we need to live. So we have to try to make it compatible. Of course, it's not the same to do it or not to do it, but this is our mission to try to make it as balanced as possible. Yes, of course, there is some damage, but it's I think the balance is okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there any other question? I can't hear.
Jorge, can you not hear Francesca?
No, I didn't hear anything. Now I hear you, but I didn't hear Francesca.
Francesca, if you can speak in French, I think that Jorge can hear the interpreter. So if you speak in French, he'll be able to follow with the interpreter. Yes, of course, I can. So for erosion, I understand that getting rid of Posidonia in summer is better. It's the best period. However, my issue is that we also have a composite that we find, and we need to think about biodiversity. And this can impact biodiversity in certain areas. So there is a composite found in Posidonia that has an impact on biodiversity. So that's why I asked the question earlier, if Posidonia is removed in summer during the period of animal and plant species recruitment and growth, they don't need it anymore. So obviously erosion isn't affected, but don't you think that this has an impact on biodiversity if you're getting rid of it in summer when the species need it?
Yes, I told you that maybe in some species, of course, it will have an impact. But this has been this has been done during many all the times since the tourism arrived here, and the Posidonia was managed not only since the tourists arrived. Before, like I told you, because it was used for the farmers many years ago. So there's of course a little impact of retiring it, but the benefit that you get when you put the beaches ready to be used and make it compatible with touristic uses, I think this is the aim of the legislation. You cannot put the balance only in one side, because as I told you, if you do that, there will not be any use in the beaches. And tell me if there is any country or any region in this moment in the Mediterranean that doesn't remove anything. I mean touristic regions. This is not a solution. There is an economical interest that has to be also taken in account. And of course, is in summer when this is the best moment to do it, and the most necessary moment to do it, because it's when the tourists come. So well, there is, like I told you, the biological impact will never be zero, but I think that this is the way that we can and we have to do it. I don't know if you in Italy don't take the Posidonia out of the beaches in the touristic areas. I think that is something that everybody has to do. So in this example, we try to do it as better as possible, and we have to, of course, we have to what I told you in the beginning. We intend to give legal security both to the managers, to the users, to the municipalities, and to us, who are the persons which are in the obligation of keeping this natural and biodiversity as better as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jorge. The discussions are going to be able to continue in the chat. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to give the floor to the next speaker. It's a very rich exchange that we've had, and we're going to move on to the next challenge. The next challenge is continuity of the current discussion, as has been underlined by one of the participants. At the end of the day, the fact that maybe we should be working at social acceptability. Maybe we should work on getting tourists to accept the fact that there will be Posidonia on the beach. Thank you very much, Jorge, for your presentation. Let's move on to the next speaker. We're moving on to our next challenge as well. It's challenge number 3, stakeholders awareness raising. But just a little poll. How are you feeling now? Are you still digesting? Are you still... Maybe you could answer the poll. So how are you feeling right now? And whilst you're responding to this, I'm going to ask Florent Beau to turn on his camera and to get ready for the presentation. Florent is from the intercommunity of the Gulf de Saint-Tropez. He gave us an insight into the game, the quiz, and now he's going to be presenting in further details the tool that's been created in the framework of the EcoAttitude device. Has the poll finished? Up until now, yes. Everyone wants a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. I've understood. Florent, I'm going to give you the floor. Off you go. And then you can maybe talk us through the quiz. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, then I'm going to share my screen. Can you correctly see my screen? Yes, perfect. So I'm now going to present the EcoAttitude project. we presented the quiz on Posidonia. This is a regional awareness raising campaign for holiday makers and residents. This was done upon the idea of the EDE organization. I'm going to present the campaign and provide feedback on this project. This goes further than the Posidonia topic. We took the example of the Posidonia quiz, as we can adapt this type of interactive quiz to the greater audience on other topics in relation with the environment. The goal is to change perceptions around the challenges on the environment, raise awareness to the holiday makers around the wealth of the Mediterranean wildlife. We presented all the partners who help us work on this Eco Attitude campaign, the Water Agency, Région Sud, Acaven, the Caven. And as you can see on the bottom right part of the screen, all the operators and stakeholders who offer quiz, ADEE, Communauté de Communes Saint-Tropez, Discovery Center for Sea and Mountain, Méditerranée 2000 organization, Naturoscope, and Écoute la Planète, who take part in this campaign on their territory. This project offers fun tools with fun contents to raise awareness around users. It's an interactive game in the sense that we propose this quiz. There are objectives to promote the natural heritage, to promote eco-friendly behaviors. This is done mainly during the summer, but it can also be done in other times. This relies on a fun animation. We have a quiz that is displayed on a screen proposed by specialized moderators around sustainable development and challenges on the environment. The point is to assess the impact of the campaign and make some issues more acceptable. In 2020, thanks to the smartphones with this interactive system, which is remote and digitalized, we offered those 4 quizzes, but there are many more. These were developed by the ADEE around the issues around food and fishing. Excuse me, I'm taking the floor. It seems that the English translation was interrupted at some point. It seems to be back now. Yes, it seems to be working. Okay, go ahead. There was just a technical issue during 30 seconds. So these are the 4 quizzes that were developed by the ADEE organization. This was around sustainable development, issues around beach users with the Info Mer campaign, with questions around the tiger insect. So these are based on different topics, and these are the digital versions. The point was to meet the constraints around COVID. In 2020, we worked on the one around the crisis. In Saint-Tropez, we also developed one to promote the sea paths, to discover the marine life and promote the species that are very characteristic to our coastline, but it can be done on other topics as well. The tool can be adapted to many other challenges and issues. The objective is to explain to the players those environmental issues and the benefits of Posidonia, for example. The point is to talk about biodiversity preservation and the role of Posidonia to fight the impacts of climate change and erosion of the coastline. The objective is for Posidonia to have the banquettes accepted and to encourage the managers to have a reasonable cleaning that both respect the economical challenges and environmental challenges. Here are a few results we got from the 2020 campaign. There were few people who responded to the campaign because there were other topics as well. People could choose the topic they wanted to play with. This might explain those results, which are quite low in terms of participation. However, for this panel, we can measure the efficiency of the actions. 75% of respondents better understood the use and how useful Posidonia can be. At the start of the survey, of the quiz, there was a question around their perception of a beach with a Posidonia banquet. And at the end of the quiz, we came back to survey-style questions to assess whether the acceptability has evolved around banquettes. 75% better understood the usefulness of Posidonia. 96% accept their presence on beaches. That's quite encouraging. And the most recurrent aspect is the protection of the beaches. And out of the 2% of respondents who do not accept banquettes, the main issue to them is the smell and the unpleasant contact with the skin in the water. As for the remaining 20%, it's the aspect of the beaches. This is a way to understand the levers in terms of awareness, which we can work on to make the Posidonia issue more acceptable. For any question with regards to this interactive quiz, you may directly reach out to Jean-François Lanier, director of the ADEE organization. We're working on an update specifically for Posidonia, and we hope that we can make it available to interested stakeholders. So do not hesitate to reach out to Jean-François. And I will also add my email in the chat box should you wish to discuss it together. If you want more information on other types of quiz we developed in the Eco Attitude campaign. Thank you for your attention. And I remain available should you have questions. Thank you very much, Florent. Yes, we have questions in the chat. Questions around the results of the quiz and this experiment that you started over the summer in order to understand if the results of the quiz are available. Yes, they have been compiled and they're available. We should see that with Jean-François, but I guess we can make that available to you. Another question. The smartphone version can be directly used by the users without moderator? For instance, with a flash code on a panel on the beach. Yes, absolutely. That's the goal of this digital version. Through a poster, a panel on the beach, you can get a flash code. People flash the QR code and they directly land to the page showing all the different available quiz. They can answer the survey in an autonomous manner based on this principle. Are there versions in different languages for tourists? For now, we don't, but we could consider it. I think we could send you the French versions and then they could be translated for should there be interest. What would be the cost to implement such a quiz? Did you have a financial model for the project? Well, not exactly yet. We're working on it. This is part of the discussions that we have with the Eco Attitude stakeholders. We have created a working group to improve the content and think about technical solutions. Different platforms offer this service. However, it's up to us now to find the one that is most adapted to our needs. We want reporting included. It's an important aspect for managers and operators to understand the efficiency of the campaign. So we are working on this. It's still a work in progress. We don't have a budget yet, but just to give you an example, a price range, the presentation as presented over lunchtime, it was on Booklab, and the yearly subscription is 300 euros. Then you can create as many quiz or contents as you want. That's just access to the platform. Now we'll need to think about how we can make it available for the content that is already existing for different operators. Yes, Mr. Tian, the region Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur wants to thank the ADE and the Saint-Tropez community for this project. It seemed very interesting for us to support this project in order to develop a tool in the region and take advantage of the Post-BMET2 project. So in the region, we are interested in developing this tool next year, in improving it and maybe finding a financial model with the possibility for the project to be scaled up in the Mediterranean with capacity building, which could be taken into account as well. If you are interested in the tool, do not hesitate to reach out to Jean-François Lanier, Florent Beau, and ourselves in order to see what type of partnership could be created in the future. We still have more questions, but I believe we should move on now. Do you also work in schools? That's another question. I'm going to let Sylvie Guigonnet, my colleague, to take the floor on this. She developed the Calypso project. Sylvie? Florent, could you stop the sharing? Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Sylvie Guigonnet. I am in charge of the C department for Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, specializing in awareness raising. I'm in charge of the Calypso device. It's an educational project which started in 2013. This is done with the National Education Ministry and other NGO structures around sustainable development and education. This project was implemented for high school students, especially for the 3 coastline departments, Bouches-du-Rhône, Var, and Alpes-Maritimes. This device targets school classes from seconde to terminale. In 2020, 54 classrooms in 38 high schools participated, which accounts for around 1,200 students. That's the numbers every year, average. The device objective is to raise awareness amongst the youth on shared management of the coastline and the sea. Of course, the objective is to encourage young people to develop a career around sea activities, to act and understand climate change and adaptation that could take place against climate change. This year, well, usually we never have a compulsory topic in high school. This year, as an exception, and in order to follow up on the POSBMed2 project, we propose, without forcing them, to take part in POSBMed2 through different projects. Out of 51 classrooms who applied in 2021, by end of May, we will have 27 classrooms who worked on Posidonia, especially around Posidonia blankets. Usually, the topic is chosen by the teachers and moderators from the Sustainable Development Education. They learn about Posidonia, what is its use. They can visit a beach. Some of them can also do some diving in order to see what goes on under the sea. And then they decide to start a project. I just wanted to give you an example. In the Dumont-d'Urville High School in Toulon, a few weeks ago, I got a chance to watch a project from a classroom who is taking part in a role play. Their project was to create role play as part of a public hearing. The objective was to represent beach managers, residents, beach users, nature protection organizations, and after preparing their arguments, they set up a debate. The debate was planned for around 45 minutes to an hour, and it lasted 2 hours with a lot of passion. At the end of this debate, we had planned on making them vote in favor or against keeping some Posidonia banquettes on the Toulon beaches. And to our great surprise, at the end of the debate, 100% of the students voted in favor of maintaining the Posidonia banquettes on the beach, meaning that when you take enough time to explain, when you take time to work with the students or even with adults, as it turns out, surprisingly, it's very interesting. To conclude, I would like to say that this project within high schools, and especially this year with the topic of Posidonia, you learn about Posidonia banquettes, and this way they can also share around them with their parents, with other students. They can share their vision of what could a different beach look like. Every year we experienced this educational effort, which leads to behavioral changes. I'm waiting for your questions now. I won't dwell on it further. I just wanted to give you an idea of this experience that was created by the region. Thank you very much, Sylvie. I would also like to say that the Calypso project is hopefully going to be developed in a partnership with the CEREMA around the use of the shore for high schoolers. This could be a project for next September, and it clearly shows the importance of dialogue, of exchanges. The quiz is a tool. A standalone quiz can, yes, indeed, as seen in the chat, can help when there is no human resource, but you can never replace a discussion with young people in educational projects in person. And thanks to this dialogue, there is a possibility for debate, which helps changing representations. I'm now going to give the floor to Francesca Rossi from the Nice Côte d'Azur University, who is going to present the EcoMed project. They won the last project tender from the region. Francesca, over to you. Hello, can you hear me well? Yes, it works. Okay. So from what I understood, it's best if I speak French, correct? Yes. Whichever language you're most comfortable with. In any case, I'm Italian. So, first of all, I would like to ask a question to Sylvie. Maybe I could do it in a moment or later. Yes, go ahead. I would like to know if you ever assessed the changes of perception in the long term. So basically going back to the same school 1 year later to see what informations they took away. Well, very often in the same high schools, we have the same students for several years. So seconde, première, terminale, 3 years in high school, not all the students, but regularly we have some high schools that apply against the following year. Now, this year, for now, we haven't made any assessment around Posidonia. However, with regards to behavioral changes, vis-a-vis plastic bottles, for example, because young people can use plastic bottles, and we realized that the students who took part in the Calypso project during a specific year, if we see them again 2 years later, we realize that they even progressed in that sense. They improved, they started projects, took initiatives with other classrooms in order to promote what they learned during the first year. Okay, this is a bit empirical. We should probably do it in a more scientific manner. However, we do realize and notice the impact, immediate impact and midterm impact. It's not easy to measure it in the long term, but at least over 2 or 3 years. Okay, thank you. So my name is Francesca Rossi. I'm a researcher at the CNRS, and I work in the EcoSys laboratories. This is a laboratory working with the CNRS Côte d'Azur University. I'm going to present the main pillars of the EcoMed project. The project aims at raising awareness to improve the use of banquettes as a natural device against erosion, but also to improve the biodiversity on beaches. First of all, I would like to introduce you to the participants in the project. We have Thalassa, a private company, the CDMM with the director, Céline Brossard, and Françoise Loques from the Scientific Council. My partner from EcoSys are Simona Bussotti, a researcher right here, Benoît Derija, who's also a CNRS researcher, and Jean-Michel Cotalorda, who is an engineer for the Côte d'Azur University. The project just started. We do not have results yet, so I'm just going to present the objectives and what we intend on doing in the coming months. We start from the idea that banquettes should not be brought to the beach in summer or any time of the year. Here you can see a few pictures from the PAL to the total destruction of the beach. Here you can see the Antibes Plage de la Garoupe and also the Petite Afrique beach, which is a beach that must be taken into account. You can see the accumulation of banquettes, which are moved from their natural site. So the goals of the project are in the number of 2. First, improving scientific knowledge. I am a scientific, and I realized that yes, indeed, we talk about the importance of banquettes, the fact that they're very important, etc., but we don't have much scientific data. We know the impact on erosion, but not on biodiversity. And we base ourselves on nature-based solutions, so we need to extend the importance of banquettes outside of erosion to understand their impact on ecosystems. The second objective is to raise awareness. This is why I'm taking the floor in this part of the web conference. And the idea was really to convince the population that the presence of Posidonia leaves is a sign of a good health from an environmental perspective, and that it's not a waste, which is fundamental for their protection. Based on those objectives, here are the actions that need to be taken. Unfortunately, I can seem to take that part of the screen, but anyway. First action around objective 1, it's to analyze the banquettes how will I put it, from a morphological perspective and around their distribution on the beach. This can be done with an educational project. We are educationologists, not morphologists, and we don't want to substitute others. So if we have morphologists who would like to collaborate with us, we'd be happy for that. Last objective, which is mainly focused on our scientific work, is to understand how banquettes is going to impact specific and functional diversity of the animals living on the beach. From an awareness raising perspective, we will do beach visits with school with a protocol that I will show you now. We will also base ourselves on the results of the scientific work. We would like also to get co-fundings from the University of Côte d'Azur to create animes with the students to explain the protocols. And thanks to the CDMM and the Cécile, we can join other actions, existing actions, for instance, the Calypso project, which you just mentioned. Final action is around a survey on the perception of the students around the Mediterranean. This way we can see the cultural differences in terms of percentages of banquet.
I'm just going to look at the scientific aspect very quickly in the presentation. We'll look at the protocols as well when we go out to sea. For the scientific aspect, to start off with, the idea was really to base ourselves on the shoreline and the relationship between the sea and the shore, and then the different backshores and banquettes that we have as well. We were therefore able to understand how Posidonia is moved from the shore out into the sea and vice versa. Here you can see a comprehensive graph to show how the dead matter is recycled. You can see how it moves from the banquette out to the sea and back again. We start off with living Posidonia, and then you can see that it's actually spread out onto the beach. It goes out into the out to the sea, the backshore and the frontshore. But let's not be so scientific about it. This is a poster that actually we created during the Festival of Sciences last year, and this was something that was aimed more at laymen so that they could understand exactly what was happening. We have different sea meadows or seagrass meadows under the sea or under the sea that we've been showing, and we were trying to show how these leaves are brought onto the shore, taken back out to the sea, and how they die, and so on and so forth. We also wanted to understand what was happening. Where are they patches? Where do we find these meadows? You can see that when we find banquettes, are they coming from the sea? Are they are they already dead? Are they dying on the shore? And so on and so forth. We also had the different causes, and that we also have work scheduled in for summer of 2021 for different beaches in the Alpes-Maritimes and maybe in the Var region in the south of France as well. For the EcoMed project now, so our educational products, we want to raise awareness amongst high school students. We've got 3 colleges coming, or 3 high schools coming from the city. We're also applying the Med-Plage protocol, and this will start in autumn 2021. And we're going to be testing a new protocol in 2022. And this based on information that we would have got through different scientific research. What is the Plage protocol. This is something that we implemented with the Fondation de France in 2019. I've understood the mots, so I understand that I've only got 1 minute left. This protocol is, as you can see on the screen, we have 3 different forms. We have a description of beaches, another description of the banquettes, and then we have a third form to fill in. We have students that are actually going to be the ones who are going to be filling in this information. They'll go to the beach and they'll be able to look at these perpendicular zones, and in each of the quadrants they'll be looking at what they find. We worked with the Matisse school last week on the 12th of March. So you can see that they had their different transects and they were able to work with their quadrants. They were very, very happy. This was something that we also had a CDMM project, it was called Calypso, looking at a secondary school in Nice, Masséna, and I think that the school students were actually very happy. I'm going to finish just with this questionnaire. This is a questionnaire that we have for Europe. We wanted to have a questionnaire for perception that were used in the framework of the Med Plage project. We also wanted to look at the European scale. We've had this questionnaire translated into 5 different languages, and we'd like to use this with school children to have a better idea of what's happening in the different areas of the region. I'd like to thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You can't see my screen anymore, is that right? You should be able to stop sharing your screen. Are there any questions? Have we got any specific questions? Yes, I would like to have different posters to raise awareness. Do you know if there is any technical help or financial help? I can't answer that, I'm afraid. I look more on the project. I work more on the project side of things, but I'm pretty sure that we can look into this. You have my email address. Another question as well. Are you also going to look? Are you going to put into place different awareness raising mediation with children so that they can go home and share their findings with their family? Yes, this is something that we have envisaged. We thought that we could try and organize a workshop for the children. We would get them to work on different projects, exactly what they did on the beach, working with these transects and the quadrants, but we thought that we'd actually invite the parents alone. Unfortunately, with the healthcare crisis and with COVID, I don't think it will be as easy for us to do. We were looking at different scenarios, and we wanted to share this with the families. There is a question that's quite interesting. Maybe we could think about these different issues with families. What are the different tools? What are the different programs, projects that can be implemented in order to ensure that parents are also being educated? There's a technical question. What are the different measurements for the quadrants? Let me just have a look at this. We look at how much sand there is. We look at the types of sand. Are we looking at fine sand? Are we looking at coarse sand? Are we looking at shingles, pebbles? Are there animals? Are there plants? I could also say that the protocols are public. So if you're interested in this, you can find this information, and please don't hesitate to contact me if you need me to guide you in the right direction. Maybe Francesca, you could just share your details in the chat. And once again, I'd like to remind you that the objective is for us to all be able to work together, to work with all the actors across the Mediterranean. And we will share your details. And if you want this conference will be made available on the Mont Littoral platform as well. And we also are going to ask you to give your consent for this, for GDRP. Let's move to the last presentation for challenge number 3, stakeholders awareness raising. I'll be giving the floor to Jean-Marc Badarou from Nudge Me. And just to start off with a little bit of explanation for the origin of our collaboration, which is just starting in the framework. It's a real product of the project that was launched by the European Union. For Med2, we wanted to ensure that we could work more specifically when it came to social acceptability of Posidonia banquettes on the beach. We wanted to start dialogue, facilitate dialogue and exchange and confrontation of different points of view, not really dare to come up at loggerheads if necessary to understand what's at stake here. We want to say that together we are a community, but we can make sense, we can make mistakes rather. Nobody is perfect, and we're going to try and find solutions together. And the third point of leverage, how can we change our tone, change our approach, be more transmissive, and avoid the rule, the fact that we're preaching to people, we're telling people what they should be doing, and we're wagging our fingers. That's not what we want at all. We want this to be a participative approach. I would like to give the floor to Jean-Marc Badarou, who will be talking about nudges. What is the Nudge Me approach? And how can cognitive behavioral science help us to facilitate social acceptability? Jean-Marc, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean-Marc Badarou. I'm the founder of the Nudge Me organizational agency dedicated to behavioral change. We want to look at lots of different societal issues, sustainable development, healthcare, or in this case, social acceptability of Posidonia. What does to nudge mean? To nudge means obviously in English to nudge someone. So we want to encourage people, to give people a little nudge in the right direction. We want to help people take virtuous decisions without constraints and without feeling guilty about what they're doing. That's very important for us and important for the other points of leverage. Well, not only we're helping with decision making, but we also want to have an impact on the field there, where the individual is going to have to decide whether they want to play by the rules or not. For example, whether they want to respect the banquette, the Posidonia banquettes or not. How can we ensure that this change and behavioral change is sustainable? This new approach, so the nudge, will look at all of the corpus, economy, behavior, but also behavioral sciences. What can we learn from behavioral sciences? Thanks to works that have been conducted in the domain, we know, and I think we've known this for about 20 years because it's nothing new. We're not reinventing the wheel here, but I think that we've all well understood how the human brain works, and more specifically, how human beings take decisions when they have the choice to. What is the main piece of information that we have from behavioral sciences is that when we do have a choice, there are two different parts of your brain. So it's just we've got two different systems that come into play, and we can choose either of those two systems. For example, we can choose system number 1 or system number 2. These two systems have their particularities and have their own characteristics. For example, system number 1 is intuitive and faster, which means that when you have a choice, you're not going to get out your microscope, you're not going to get out your analytical brain, you're just going to take a decision very, very quickly based on your gut feeling. That's system number 1. System 2 is going to take out the microscope, it's going to take out that magnifying glass and really go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. This system is analytical and therefore slower. Decision-making is slow. In what we've seen in behavioral sciences, there have been a whole series of experiments that have been conducted in and out of laboratories, and this is really what's new. But generally speaking, we take decisions with our system number 1, our intuitive and fast, rapid side of the brain. As soon as we get up in the morning, as soon as we get out of bed, we have shortcuts that we're taking in order to take the decisions that we need to make, and quickly so, based on stimuli that are coming from the exterior. This means that we take too often decisions with system number 1, which is not as efficient as the second system, because there's no analysis, there's no analytical or critical eye that is brought to a decision that needs to be taken, and this is an issue. This new approach and nudge will allow us to have a different take on decision making. What were the results? So social sciences, and what we can learn from social sciences is the following. We aren't based on reason, we're based on emotions. We are impacted by emotions. Emotions will modify our behavior, and we're also social creatures, which means that when we have a decision to be taken, and when we are being told to follow instructions or not, as the case may be, more often than not, we take the wrong decision. For example, you know that when you're smoking a cigarette on the beach, you know that you're not meant to throw your cigarette butt onto the sand. However, for different reasons, for different social reasons, we still see smokers who throw their cigarette butts onto the sand, even though they know that it's wrong, even though they know that it's bad for the environment. And so just knowing that something is bad, or just knowing that you're breaking the rules, isn't enough. We need help in this decision-making process, and this is exactly the context where we want to react. We need to be able to react in the heat of the moment, so when that choice is being made. And this is where nudge comes into play. Nudge is a state of mind, nudge is a mentality rather than a technique. If I were to sum this up in a nutshell for you, what is the DNA of nudge? We're talking about being kind. It's not about finger wagging, it's not about blaming, it's not about saying you're doing this wrong. That's not at all. It's about being pragmatic. We want to ensure that we're looking at all of the different information or pieces of information, all of the different awareness raising that has been done. Nudge is not a standalone method. It isn't a standalone magic solution or silver bullet. We need to think about different press campaigns, what you've heard on the radio, and so on and so forth. The second issue, or the second aspect, is the fact that there are lots of different decisional tools that help us to overcome the poor or bad behavior that we've seen. You've got the 10 behaviors, and we're going to focus on these 10 behaviors in order to find solutions. The third aspect of our DNA is being opportunistic. which means that the same system, the system number one, which is fast, which is intuitive, which is based on our gut feeling, that this system will still be used as a vector and as leverage to take the right decision and also to engender behavioral change. Nudge is going to share information, is going to shape the brain so that the brain knows how to use system number one in order to take that right decision and an informed decision. A couple of examples, and in fact, three examples of nudge. I'm going to share an image you can see on the screen what we've put. We've put these in the different national parks in France, in different shelters, in different mountain shelters, and this is about how long you take under the shower. 3 points of leverage. There's psychosocial aspects to start off with. It's the fact that when we're taking a shower, we don't really see these types of pictures. Normally there's tiling, normally there's the shower curtain, but that's it when we're taking a shower. So it's quite striking when you walk into a shower cubicle and you see this stick. We have a sticker without glue, a sticker that will be on one of the walls of the cubicle. And it's about, okay, you're meant to spend 5 minutes under the shower. Water is precious, you've got 5 minutes, and it's about reminding that person. They've already seen the poster outside that it's 5 minutes, and when they're under the shower, they can see 5 minutes. And then we're giving them the control. We're putting them into the driving seat. Because I don't know, unless you're Superman, no one is capable of knowing if the shower's 5 minutes long. So we need to check this. How do we check this? What we've got is we've been sticking egg timers, which means that you can time your shower. You're under the shower, you've seen that you should be in there for 5 minutes, and you've got a sand timer, you've got an egg timer that's going to help you time your shower. Everyone likes playing with those things. You're in the shower and you see one of these stuck to the wall. It's fun. The second nudge, to incite, to incentivize employees, for example, or even at home, to turn off the light switch. We've got 2 stickers. Once again, stickers without glue is a hand. It looks like this, as if someone was trying to turn off the light switch. And we've got a second sticker that's on the switch. And here you can see that it's a clover, that it could be anything. And here I know that, okay, if I click on the clover, if I kick on the light switch, it's lucky and good luck for the planet. Third nudge. This is about how, this was for Safran, so a French company, and we were trying to encourage them to use carpooling. We have different tools. There were other tools as well, but I'm only going to show you the 2 main tools. To start off with, we had a different paint. We had signs painted onto the car parking spots to say that this car parking spot is only for someone who is car sharing or carpooling. And it is also something that is a perk. So if you're carpooling, you get these car parking spaces dedicated for you, so you're not looking for loads of car parking spaces. And the second part is that we're also going to give those who are carpooling to stick a sticker onto their windshield with the same graphic, with the same picture. So I'm coming to Safran for work and I am carpooling. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. And obviously, if you have any questions, any comments, I am all ears. Thank you very much, Mr. Badaro. Let's have a look to see in the chat if there are any questions, comments. There is a question. Are there any examples of how you've applied the nudge approach in our natural ecosystems? For example, for the banquettes, and what were the results? Olivier, it's our objective. The be all and end all. The end goal is to be able to do this. We've been working on this in 2022, but Jean-Marc, I think that for this irritant, so people who go to the beach and they see seaweed, I'm sorry, no, other ecosystems, so other than for Posidonia. Sorry, I didn't say that, I didn't write the question very well, says the speaker. We have been working with national parks in France for animal species in the mountains, especially for ski stations, but I can't really share that. We haven't got to the end of the project, so I can't really share anything with you. But this approach is very important for me. So nudge and also behavioral sciences, it is a mentality and a very new state of mind. We have been trying to embody this other mentality, other states of mind for a long time now, but we haven't yet been able to apply this method to all of the different behavioral issues that we're facing in France. What about abroad? Abroad, not that I know of, not that I'm aware of. I'm not sure that any of these types of actions exist, but maybe I'm wrong. Just a quick compliment. In Bocro, I don't know the details very well, but maybe if you ask them about it, they'll be able to share it with you. And it's to ensure that birds aren't disturbed. So there are different nudges because there's that we have too many people visiting the parks, and so they've put into place different nudges. For example, posters, signs that saying you're making noise and this is disturbing the birds, and they also have a different system in order to measure the decibels. And it meant that people would see these signs, they'd see these posters and think, oh, maybe I'm speaking too loudly, and they'd reduce their voices as well. It says things like you're disturbing the birds, and maybe think about the decibels, and they would do that. I didn't actually know that this was a thing. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it, so I can't. Sometimes you see these warning signals, but what we're trying to do is not finger wag. We're not trying to be policing people. We want people to embody their own behavioral change. We see that awareness raising is very important, but all of this that has to happen upstream so that we can have real change on behavior. I have a feeling. I feel like there's a lack of awareness raising. There's a lack of awareness, full stop, in France. So that's what I feel. That's just I don't know about this one enough. One of the observations that have been made in the chat from Francesca Rossi is actually like this. Do you think that you can associate the nudge system with more explicative action? No, we can't. Because as I mentioned earlier, the nudge isn't there to make people feel guilty. We're not there to put anything in place, and we're not the ones who's going. We're not there to. It's not about awareness raising either. It's about giving people that nudge in the right direction, but that discourse that has to come prior, the awareness raising, the knowledge, the information, all of that needs to come prior with classical or traditional media channels. Nudge isn't going to use this. Obviously, a sticker, it's maybe not a sticker, might not just be a sticker. We have other tools as well, but we are not there to give lessons. Have you measured the risk of users just not paying attention to these stickers? Nudge is communications. That's all we're doing. We're communicating. We're changing the way that we communicate with people. That's it. That's as far as it goes. But, sorry, could you just repeat the second part of the question? I think I forgot. So do you not think that there is a little bit of awareness? What is the awareness? What is the efficiency of this? I think that have we been able to measure the rate of integration once the nudge is removed? Well, I think that all of these different devices aren't on equal footing. For example, the nudge, the most famous one is the fly. And I don't think that this will ever go out of fashion. I don't think that this will ever stop working. However, we have other steps, other systems put into place, and I think that we will have to fine-tune them in the future. Maybe they'll stop working after a month, maybe they'll stop working after a year, but maybe we could change the creative aspect, or the mechanism will stay the same. It's just how we're going to package these different nudges. There are other questions in the chat, but unfortunately, I think that we're going to have to take a coffee break. And this is good. I'm glad that there are questions and comments. We can see that there are very specific questions in the chat as well. For example, Raphaël Robert talking about whether you think that who is the target? Are they users? How are you going to get these the different users to accept the fact that there is seaweed or Posidonia on the shore? In a nutshell, yes, those are the final users that we are targeting. Thank you very much. Let's have a quick coffee break. Quick coffee break, and we'll be back in 10 minutes time, 4:10, and we'll be looking at the last challenge for coastline management strategies, and we will be giving the floor to different state actors. We'll start back up at 4:10. Quick break, thank you.
Avoid your tea, your coffee. One last survey. Should we do it again? If we do this event again, we will let you answer now. I didn't even have time for a cup of tea. So I'm now going to invite Samuel Dijou from the Department Management of Territories and Seas from the VAR department to turn his mic on and his camera to present the management strategy of sandy beaches and erosion in the VAR. With this first speaker, we will cover issue number 4, coastline management strategies to anticipate and plan for our Mediterranean territories. Yes, does it work from a technical standpoint? Yes, it works. And with regards to the survey, everyone has answered the survey. Oh, good. Let's continue. Thank you for giving me the floor on this project that took place in the VAR department. So let's start with the start. Department strategy for management of sandy beaches in erosion. This document was created by the DDTM, Territory Department for Sea and Land. This is part of their role to regulate activities at sea and in the coastline to make sure that these projects are in line with the environmental regulations and to make sure that they are in line with regulations to access, occupation, and construction of the coastlines and at sea. For this short presentation, I will explain the strategy, the context, objectives, and principles, and I will talk to you about its implementation to date, focusing on areas of improvement. The objectives of the strategy. We observed that in the VAR department, we have more and more urban planning projects aiming at fighting beach erosions. The DTM decided to have a framework document reminding people of principles and recommendations inspired by the national strategy of integrated management, which was mentioned before today. And from a selfish perspective, the point is to facilitate the instructions, to give some peace of mind to our agents and to give more visibility to the stakeholders in terms of expectations and choices from the administration. This document was drafted with the communities, with experts, with other involved administrations, and validated early 2020 by the VAR prefect. So this is our philosophy. Depending on the characteristics of the sites where the project is taking place, and that must be taken into account at the very first start of the project. This relates to the environment of the beach. Is it very constructed, completely natural? And then this is to encourage actions that will not denature the site. If it's inappropriate, for example, to construct or have works in a natural environment. In order to define those appropriate methodologies for any project to fight erosion, certain principles must be respected. These are the following. First of all, it's not neutral. This type of project is not neutral, given the possible impacts on the environment. The interest of the project must be proven based on an analysis of the challenges. It's a way to justify the project. Then natural procedures are favored, what we call soft management. These must be analyzed and given priority when possible. The study must take into account the geographic site, including all areas that could have a sedimentary exchange with the project. We mentioned this morning with the BRGM. The study must into account the long-term perspective and consider relocalization solutions. This is just one way to take into account adaptation to climate change. The study must also take into account the impact on marine species. This is the philosophy of the document, and it can be found online at the address below. The document is around 100 pages, so I decided to summarize it pretty much. This is for the content. Now, what about the life of the document? Of course, the document was validated just less than a year ago, and the year 2020 was not a standard year. However, we can already learn some lessons with some positive aspects, messages that were consolidated. We, for instance, informed all the stakeholders on the objectives, on the view and analysis of the projects, and we decided to highlight the rules that apply in terms of environmental follow-up, needs, and level of study. We consider this is satisfactory in terms of mutual understanding in the sector. It's not all perfect, however, there are some tension points, and the implementation has to face the reality. For instance, the initial challenge, which is to encourage an integrated long-term vision, is not working so well for now. And the logic of ad hoc projects remains very pregnant. I'm now going to show you two case studies, and we will see together how the strategy is blocked and how it can be improved sometimes. Let's take the example of a reprofiling project while using mechanical means to get rid of Posidonia banquettes. A possible decision would be to decline the project, asking for the Posidonia banquettes to be maintained with a manual cleaning with no sand movements. As I said, this rationale is not always completely pregnant. Sometimes the rule says that there is a certain level of tolerance for Posidonia leaves movements. And this was mentioned earlier, the social and economic consequences, the impact on tourism, the acceptability of the solution are not mastered or objectivized for now. So the current trend is to give an agreement based on conditions, for instance, not evacuating the Posidonia outside of the site, make a report after the project so we can build knowledge and create a reflection with a multi-year timeline reflection. These are the type of conditions that the approval could be based on. Another case study, let's imagine that you get a project to protect a beach through the use of a dam. We see that giving freedom of movement to the beach, these alternatives are not really explored at the moment. In project cases, this is not sufficient. However, on each side, for the administration or the project managers, that there are a lack of technical legal tools helping to analyze in a credible manner the relocalization of the issues. These are the difficulties. There are probably more, but these are the difficulties that I wanted to present you today. And our ambition is to become progressively more strict. Why? Simply because supporting tools are being implemented. We saw it. We have more and more Serena and BRGM studies around benchmarking, knowledge. And there's also a lot of work to build knowledge, which was presented earlier with the Littoral platform, for instance. There's also a bill that is currently being reviewed. And with all this context, this seems to be in favor of solution-based solutions, which will lead to a more strict implementation of our strategy. As a conclusion, the DDTMs and the REALs are now structuring themselves to meet those demands, to support the communities for more local strategies. Internally at the DTM, this goes through a more systematic integration of other services in charge of natural risks, urban planning, legal, land rights, etc. And with regards to our partnership with the DREAL, it is currently being structured and policies that are more and more developed at national level. We want to provide support, advice, so that the project managers can rely on us in terms of knowledge collection, regulation, strengthening of the legal and financial framework for these projects, protection of the areas. So this is now growing, and ultimately, should the projects be implemented, they should not be implemented in the emergency, but through a local strategy of an integration of the coastline. Thank you for your attention, and I remain available for questions. I didn't hear Marguerite, so I guess I didn't go over the allocated time. No problem, you completely abided by the rules. Thank you, Samuel, for this very clear and educational presentation. Are there any questions in the chat? A question here, how DDTM can help environmental protection organizations, should there be agreements around the implementation of a project? What are the options to support NGOs in order to go against the case number 2 presentation? Well, the DTM help in this case will probably be more around reminding the regulation what rationale was used to make the decision. I think it can be helpful to the organizations who consider that the common good may have been damaged and want to take legal action. So this could give them some arguments from a regulation perspective. Thank you. Another question. This strictness will is planned over what timeline? Should we rely on the new bill when we already have the littoral law existing for over 40 years? Yes, the littoral law is a different topic, as it is mainly around retro coastline. This is not around constructions on beaches. The new law that should pass is a true hope for the implementation of more ambitious policies. Another question: why, as part of projects to avoid erosion, is manual cleaning not imposed by the state? So for submarine dams, for example, should there not be manual cleaning imposed by the state? Why not? In certain cases, it has been imposed. I don't remember when this was done, but this could be considered as part of compensation measures. This is a solution that could be explored for future projects. Well, in any case, in cases of beach concessions, we can see the communities that impose different cleaning methods that respect the ecosystems more with dumping methodology. This is more and more recurrent. Another question: it seems that outside of the support, beach users accept Posidonia in that role to protect the coastline. There is also a challenge around supporting local communities and elected representatives in offering nature-based solutions, which requires training. Yes, indeed, this requires technical support and organizational support to implement nature-based solutions. Yes, indeed, I will let you answer, but that's one of the objectives of the DDTM. Yes, the question basically includes the answer itself. One could imagine this could be an employment for students to compensate the lack of employment in accommodation, for instance, but that's an option. Maybe one final question: what type of relocalization is considered in an urbanized area? So I guess this relates to relocation. Maybe you could clarify your question, Mr. Grez? If you want to take the floor. It doesn't seem to work. Yes, hello. Around the erosion coastline strategy, you talked about alternatives by letting the backwards beach. However, when in an urbanized area, the back beach is mainly owned, so private property. How can you, or relocating is definitely a question that applies to several areas in the region. Not sure if state services would like to answer this question, which is more or larger than just beach management? Yes, well, the answer might not be comprehensive, but I just want to tell you that this question in the region is recurrent for many municipalities. This is a very urbanized territory in the coastline, and spaces that might be lost by the rise of sea levels or erosion, we might have to consider opportunities for the retro coastline to welcome activities that have been relocated. This is an additional difficulty we meet in the region with some very high prices in terms of land, a lot of private properties, including a lot of secondary residents create those questions. We do not have the perfect answers for now, but we have implemented projects to make sure that stakeholders can start thinking collectively. We always refer to the Mon Littoral platform because we would like it to become a reference for stakeholders to find all the information that they might be looking for. And that includes, for instance, mid-January, the organization with the Sainte-Maxime municipality, a gathering of experts to discuss the spatial recomposition of a coastline town which faces this type of issue, with Sainte-Maxime, who agreed to be, let's say, a pilot town in the review of their PLU to see how this could be done. For sure, before we start wondering how to implement the relocation project, first of all, we know that a discussion should start. We should explain to all the relevant stakeholders, inhabitants, elected representatives, technicians from different departments, in order to have a shared diagnosis, to make sure that there is a good understanding of the issue, and then the tools that must be used in order to build those relocation projects must be available and must be mobilized, knowing that this reflection is also taking place at national level and that future projects might be a way to draft new answers with new urbanization tools that have been created in order to facilitate this type of action. I won't get into more details for the next presentations, which might answer this question. Thank you very much, Peggy. This actually relates to the next presentations, one from the Ministry, the General Directorate of Planning, Housing and Nature, and then Mrs. Ricard. So first, Arthur de Cambière. Thank you very much. I almost managed to hear all the presentation except during between 2 and 3. Several of us from the ministry are present today, and I'm sure my colleagues will have heard everything. This is very valuable, and I see that this meets the projected area issues, marine waste. So for the climate and resilience bill, this is very valuable input. Just for my information, we have 15 minutes for our presentation, is that correct? Yes. We're supposed to conclude at 4:45 with a small exchange after your presentation. We planned for 15 minutes, no problem. I appreciate the time constraints, but I am presenting to you as the head of office for management of marine spaces in the Ministry of the Environmental Transition, and then the subdirector for protection and restoration of marine areas for the bill climate resilience. With regards to the theory around the national strategy presented after some very specific examples of what's being done at local level, we might be a little less concrete or specific in my presentation. But just to give you some context, I'll give you an idea of what's currently being done so you understand what the Climate and Resilience Bill will bring in the future. To date, the global context where the national strategy of integrated management of the coastline introduced in 2012, the context is a major crisis relating to climate change. I'll give you a few numbers. We consider that within 100 years, the sea levels rose by 16 centimeters and 3.6 centimeters rise per year. If in a scenario of 1.5 degree increase by 2100, the sea level rise could be between 30 centimeters and 1 meter by 2100. It's difficult to be more local or precise, but in any way, that's what the International Expert Group on Climate tells us. Now, with regards to the collapse of biodiversity, the pace of yearly extinction of species is 100 to 1,000 times more than the natural pace. 1 species out of 8 is threatened of extinction. There are several causes: location fragmentation, overexploitation of species, contamination, etc. That gives you now a bit of context, although this presentation, this information is not very positive. Now, with regards to the integrated management of coastline is part of adaptation, which differs from another policy, which is to mitigate. Now, we are working in an adaptation logic. This strategy is done parallelly to another strategy that can be done at national level around protected areas. A new strategy has been drafted for the 2020 to 2030 period. So we should know that this is part of a more global action supported by ministries and with the support of local communities. I'm going to give you a few numbers here briefly. In this presentation, you can see a lot of data at national level. 1/4 of the metropolitan coastline face erosion. 50% of the coastline departments have retreating coastlines, and with an increase of sea level by 1 meter, half of the departments would be impacted, especially the ones who are very urbanized. In France, it's 2.5 higher in France, with surfaces that are up to 5 to 6 times more urbanized than other areas in France. With regards to the national strategy, the foundations come from the working group on the coastline with all the relevant stakeholders as part of the Grenelle de la Mer from 2009. The main takeaways were 3 main objectives: being able, through the national strategy and local implementation, to anticipate coastline evolution to facilitate the adaptation of the territories to those partly natural changes. In order to anticipate this better, improve the available knowledge. And this is with that in mind that we worked with the Serena in developing a national indicator around coastline erosion. So a lot of knowledge work done and building a database on coastline data. So a lot of tools that has been built and continues to be built to be available for the municipalities. This was very well explained in the different past presentations, the need to strengthen the resilience of coastline spaces, relying on the natural role of coastal spaces. This is definitely the case with the example of Posidonia. I don't remember the numbers, but being able to maintain a lively and healthy Posidonia while keeping the dead one should be planned in the strategy and should help decrease the intensity of the different phenomena that exist in this context of withdrawal of the coastline.
Even if it's not simple, and the idea is the following: we want to be able to live with the fact that we've got a receding coastline, or live with the fact that the different effects, the different impacts of climate change, rather than trying to fight against it. It's something that we're going to have to accept because it's inevitable. It's just a degree of the impact that we can have a hand over. We have different action plans, we have or common principles, common guidelines. We've also got recommendations. I'm not going to read them all to you, you can see them on the screen, but we do have different actions that come in a long-term perspective. We have a long-term outlook to better anticipate and adapt what we're doing to receding shorelines. In addition to this, we look at integrated management strategies, taking into consideration the social economic aspects, as well as decisions that may be taken and their impacts on the environment. This is something that we're seeing in lots of different policies. How do we preserve and conserve biodiversity? We've got socio-economical aspects, we've got the environment, and now also urban planning and biodiversity. This is at the heart of most discussions that are being had. How can we anticipate what's happening, and how can we ensure that we're one step ahead of the game? It's been said we've got different nature-based solutions. For example, we've looked at what wet zones, what what Posidonia can do for the ecosystems. How can we better adapt? I think that our colleagues have made very relevant points over the course of the day, and also improving knowledge. I mentioned this within the strategy. We also find in the action plans that were rolled out in 2015-2016, the fact that territories should be given a little bit of poetic license to experiment, to see what works for them, be this from a nature-based solution point of view. Also, we spoke about different types of sand, or different types of projects to bringing sand back to beaches. This is important for us in the strategy, and we often have looked at the necessity to restore beaches, to protect coral reefs, and so on and so forth, especially in the light of climate change. Just so you have an idea of what this strategy has in store. We had a different action plan in 2017. I spoke about the national indicators for erosion. We also have the European project LIFE on adaptation and implementing nature-based solutions. We have different experiments that have been put into place. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think that there was one in the Bago region, and Call for Projects was launched last year by the Ministry of Ecological Transition for nature-based solutions. Once again, same idea here, and we had 7 different projects that were selected. I don't think that there is anything in the Bago region, but in the Occitania region there was a project that was selected, so that we can not only prevent coastal erosion, protect biodiversity, but all the while maintaining the attractiveness or the attractivity of the region. We understand that economic development is important, and this is taken into consideration. And to wrap up, in fact, I have finished. That's it from me. Obviously, this national strategy needs to be able to be rolled out on a local and regional level. As I'm speaking to you, there aren't any binding laws. These regional strategies or local strategies aren't binding at all. They're recommendations from the national strategy, but it is all the while very important, and we're convinced that this is completely necessary for us to find an agreement between the different state services and the territories and regions, so that we all are seeing a reading, or so that we are all on that same wavelength for the long run. As Fabienne said, we have the horizon of 2100, which isn't as far away as it may be seen. We have seen the strategy for the different coastal areas. There are other strategies as well, but what we can take away from this is that there isn't a one size fits all. I think the territories and the different communities have understood that they can make this their own and roll it out so that it is best adapted to their needs and to their realities. I think we have 7 or 8 different local strategies that have been rolled out in the same region, all this to take into consideration the different particularities of the regions. And I know that the rhythms, the cadences are different. For example, Hauts-de-France is working on its local strategy in Occitania rather. They're looking at a regional strategy that has been adapted, but from the national strategy adopted by the state. And it's something that is of huge interest to us at the ministry to have an overview. This is very important for all of the different exchanges and debates that we could have on the subject. I hope that I didn't take too long. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much. Maybe we can go straight to the next speaker, Ms. Rika. Yes, I'm going to share the presentation for her, Fabienne. She'll be presenting Article 58, Proposal of Climate and Resilience Bill. Fabienne, can you hear me? Says the speaker. I'm here, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, if you could look at the PowerPoint, that would be good. I'm going to find the PowerPoint. Hold on 1 second. I can also do it. It's fine. I've got it, and that way you can concentrate on the rest. I'm going to share my there was a good teasing. We gave you a little taster of the different questions that were asked in the chat. Fabienne, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I'm going to start straight away. Maybe I'm going to turn off my camera. I'll put it on later. I have slight technical difficulties. I think my connection is not very good. Can you see the right screen? No, we can't. You can't see the screen? Okay, I'm going to try again. It should be okay now. This should be working for you now. No. Okay, now it's perfect. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This webinar has been wonderful. Just to be able to hear everything that's been going on, the different reactions, and also your expectations with regards to the draft bill, climate and resilience. I'm going to talk about the different provisions that we've been working on. And for your information, the discussions on this topic will start tomorrow at the National Assembly. Just to say that this is something that is very important, that we've been working on very strongly with all of the different members of Parliament. Prior to starting, I'd just like to remind you of a couple of the aspects, a couple of the elements, so that you have context. Arthur, if we can go to the next slide, you'll be able to understand that the draft bill comes at the end of works that have been going on for the past 10 years. Arthur spoke about the integrated management plans on a national level. I'm not going to go back over what he said, but they're very important. But even though these are not legally binding, for us, these are very important because it is a base and it has paved the way for us to now have other works such as this draft bill. This was mentioned earlier. We needed to have a shared diagnosis. I won't repeat what was said earlier. The strategy started in 2012 and this allowed us to start with a call for projects for all of the territories who wanted to initiate reflection and lines of thought on relocating goods and activities between 2012-2015. We had Hérault, Var, Petit-Bourg in Guadeloupe, Eau in the Somme region, and Lacano in Gironde. At that time, they really shed light on the fact that the different tools in place for coastlines, be we looking at legal, technical, or financial plans, were lacking. They were insufficient. Therefore, we wanted to really look at different draft bills rather that saw the light of day between 2016-2019. This is what led to the Prime Minister. It was in autumn 2018. He decided that the 3 reports, IGA, IGF, and CGEDD, would be undertaken. There was another parliamentary report. It was with Stéphane Bouchou. It was called "What Will the Coastline of Tomorrow Look Like?" And this also had a whole plethora of recommendations and proposals, once again operationalizing the inspections that were mentioned earlier. This fed into the different works that were presented to the Ecological Defence Council on the 12th of February 2020, approved at the highest echelons of the French state, because the president of this council is the president of the French Republic. As Arthur mentioned earlier, we're looking at developing a new model to look at the coastline. What's important for us is planning. We're looking at anticipating receding coastlines, especially when we have buildings or housing or accommodation that could be impacted by this. We wanted to put into place a toolbox, and this is what we've been working on for the past 10 years. We wanted to fill this toolbox. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we were looking at a legal, financial framework. We've got 4 axes to start off with: improve knowledge and share information. This is something that I've heard over the course of the day. Lots of people have mentioned this. The second axis looks at bringing solutions to existing goods. So how can we better manage our stock? The third facet is how can we limit exposure to new goods and new areas, the beaches, the coastal areas that aren't yet impacted by this, how can we limit their exposure? And this was something that was mentioned earlier, once again, leading me on to our 4th aspect: how do we have spatial or urban planning operations when necessary? Let me go into further details just very, very quickly. You can change the slide. You should be able to see it. You should be able to see the knowledge and information sharing on the screen. Yes, we can. First axis, as you can see, we're looking at information sharing and improving knowledge. Different measures have been proposed. You can see the draft bill looks at identifying different communes or different municipalities that are most exposed, have the most at stake. From a receding coastline point of view, here we really want to concentrate public action on the hardest hit of regions. The second element is, once we've drawn up this list, we want to map out a 100-year horizon receding coast, or what the coastline will look like in 100 years from now, and we can decide what the different zones are important. At this moment in time, it's up to the collectivities or the municipalities to take the decision as to whether they want to act now in order to protect their coastlines. If we can move to the next slide, please. On this map, you'll be able to see 2 different zones of exposure. We've got erosion on the short and mid-term 30 years and long-term 30 to 100 years. And the last measure in order to improve knowledge will be a reform of information for future acquirers or renters in these exposed zones so that they know exactly what they're signing up to when they want to visit a building, when they want to visit a house or accommodation. As soon as they're making a decision as to whether they want to live in or buy a property, they're aware of the fact that because they're receding coastline, in X number of years from now, this property will be impacted. If we now look at the second facet, looking at current housing, how can we look at housing stock? We've got lots of different tools. To start off with, we've got land, public authorities. We need to ensure that we do have a mid and long-term vision for those coastline areas or coastal areas that are not yet affected by erosion. The idea here would be to use different public establishments to help us, because these are the ones that are buying land and acquiring land for municipalities and collectivities. The objective would be to look at an urban planning code that would be complete in order to adapting littoral or coastal territories to deal with receding coastlines. We also want a specific law in place which will allow us, it's a preemptive or preemption right. And this means that when you want to buy or acquire land that could be impacted by coastal erosion, there are lots of different preemption rights that you're able to have access to. The third tool is a very innovative tool based on a draft bill that was proposed earlier and that I mentioned earlier between 2016 and 2019. This was put forward by Brady. We are looking at a longer lease in order to look at adapting to impacts of climate change. This would allow different municipalities or different townships to consent to different rights, real estate rights, all the while remaining the owner of the land with royalties that will be paid. Let's move to the third facet now. For the third facet, this is the one that will allow territories and townships to take things and take matters into their own hands so that they have a little bit of leeway with regards to what they want to do. You could see this in the mapping of evolution of the coastline. We saw how territories have actually evolved over time. We have the long-term exposure zone, 30 to 100 years. If there aren't any other risks, so if erosion is the only risk, we are looking at framing different constrictions. So we would allow certain types of buildings, but not others. However, if we're looking at zones that are exposed on a short or mid-term, so up to 30 years, here we would want to forbid all new builds. You would still be able to renovate existing buildings and there would be limited extension. We would allow the possibility once again to add extensions, especially as long as we're not looking rather at increasing how many people can fit into a certain building, the capacity of the building. The fourth facet, how can we look at spatial replanning so that we're able to move away or move these buildings away to zones that are not exposed to coastal erosion. In order to carry out these long-term projects, we have a partner project for spatial planning or urban planning. It is a partnership with the state, a long-term partnership with different financiers and with different funders. It is a privileged partnership. I think that an expression of interest was launched in 2020. I know that there are different townships that have already signed up. Lacanou, Couville-sur-Mer and Saint-Jean-de-Luz and we are currently trying to attract other townships so that they are part of this tool. We think that this tool is something that should be privileged and could really change realities for different townships. We have been testing tools and legal tools in labs and financial tools as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? I think this is the last slide of my presentation. So that we're able to anticipate these different operations, we've got different urban planning documents that have been adapted. We've got the SCOTs and the PLUs. So we've got local urban planning plans. We've also got programs for territorial coherence. Another important aspect that we're currently working on, and that we're actually asking for the government to give us the authorization necessary to do so, is a possibility to delegate or to apply certain rules to the coastal law. If we're looking, it would allow us to waive certain of these rules. So if we think that an operation needs to be undertaken in order to benefit these buildings that could be exposed to coastal erosion, and there is no other choice, we would be allowed to waive certain rules. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Thank you very much. Let me have a look in the chat. There are questions. For the different communes that revised their urban planning plan recently, what can they envisage? If they haven't measured the erosion or submersion risk, will it be possible or even obligatory to add it if they appear on the list by law? They have a timeline, but yes, it will be. There is a time frame for them to carry out this mapping. I think it's a 3-year time frame off the top of my head, so that they're able to take the necessary measures in order to, it's not overnight. We're not going to ask them to map this out overnight. We will give them a specific time frame for them to adhere to. Another question about the criteria. What are the different criteria that are identified for different regions to be put on the list? And do you think that there will be any resistance? We're looking at the different communes that are the most vulnerable. We're not just talking about coastal erosion, but other stakes as well. If we're looking at a beach or a coast where there aren't any services, there aren't any buildings, there isn't any housing, then what is at stake, the leverage is slighter. However, if we've got a coastline on which there are lots of houses, this for us will be very important. So it's not just about the national indicator for coastal erosion, but it's also about urban planning and what we're actually finding on the coast and what will the exposure be, who will be impacted, and what is at stake. Is there a risk of submersion or erosion? Another question. Can you give us a time frame for this bill? And when do you think it will be applied? I didn't hear the question, says the speaker. Yes, do you think you could give us a time frame? You said that the bill was going to be examined, and do you know when it may come into effect? What I can say to you, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's going to be presented to the Commission tomorrow. There will be a debate. It will go to the National Assembly. There are different articles that have been integrated, and the debates and the deliberations will start tomorrow. There will be a plenary session at the end of March, and there are lots of very complicated provisions that the government has asked for an order to be given, and the order will last 9 months. So I can't give you a time frame right now, but if everything goes well and if everything goes to plan, then by the end of the year. Thank you very much for your presentation. Maybe we can go to our conclusion. I am going to invite Antoine Nico, and he will be sharing his screen. Please can you turn on your camera, your screen, and he will be sharing the outlooks for the future. Putting these challenges into perspective regarding the impact of climate change on the coastline. And after this, I'll ask you all to turn on your camera so we can take a photo all together. We may not be physically together, but we're together virtually and in spirit. And I will ask you all to turn on your cameras, and there'll be a very quick questionnaire at the end. Mr. Nico, you have the floor.
Was the warmest year on the planet, and 2020 was almost at the same level, a record year. The cause is the increase of greenhouse gases. We are part of the responsibility due to deforestation. The consequences of this increase of temperature is an increase mainly on emerged lands more than oceans. However, it's also more significant in Arctic areas and other areas. These are the inequalities. A change in terms of precipitation regime, although there is a lot of uncertainty. Drier areas will be more dry and humid areas will be more humid. This global warming should increase extreme events. We will see it in a moment with the increase of ocean temperatures, which was one of the causes, and a change of physical and biological characteristics of oceans, which I will focus on now today. Oh, I need to click on the screen, apologies. So with regards to consequences on seas, oceans, and coastline, I will talk about three main items: the increase of temperatures in waters and oceans, increase of or rise of ocean levels, and further acidity. With regards to the increase of temperatures, I extracted this from a recent article. You can see the warming of sea on a global scale. You can see that in the 80s and 90s, there was a faster pace in terms of increase of temperature, 0.11 degrees per decade on a global scale. In 2020, there was an absolute record of temperature on the ocean levels. The temperature and this increase of temperature is due to the fact that 90% of excess heat due to global warming is absorbed by oceans. And we can see that this penetrated the deepest layers of the oceans. First layer is 0 to 500 meters. And since the 80s and 90s, 500 to 1,000 meter areas are impacted. And up to now, there is some increase of temperature in deeper layers, 1,500 to 2,000 meters. Ocean warming is an indicator of global warming and climate change. And ocean warming is not necessarily equally shown on the whole surface of the globe. I'm now going to focus on the Mediterranean. Since the 90s, we see a strong acceleration in terms of increase of temperatures around the Mediterranean Sea. I think it's the highest increase on the globe. And even within the Mediterranean, there's a lot of variety. North, Western, and Adriatic Mediterranean areas are the most impacted. There are different areas. If you look at the measures done in the Villefranche-sur-Mer area, we see a 0 degrees increase per decade. This increase in temperature is just like the air temperature followed by extreme events, record temperatures, which will probably be increased with climate warming. We can see the 2015 record temperatures, and here you can see the projections for the second part of the century. In green, if we significantly reduce our greenhouse gases emissions, so between 1.5 and 2 degrees here, this will have consequences on heat waves. There will be much more heat waves. And if we don't reduce our emissions and the temperature increases by 4 or 5 degrees, submarine heat waves will be very intense, much more intense and much more lengthy, with some very significant impacts, especially around marine biodiversity. So, as I was saying, there are consequences on biodiversity, on species, for example, on certain species you can see on the screen. We also talked about rabbit fish who ate the Posidonia. It can be very gluten. We also saw some significant mortality segments on gorgons, especially during heat waves. The increase in temperatures can also lead to an increase of Mediterranean episodes. This increases the intensity as well. I just want to highlight around this segment, it took a while to relate those episodes to climate change. The latest studies show that since the 60s, this Mediterranean episodes have increased in terms of intensity by 22% since the 60s. Episodes with more than 200 millimeters of rain per day have doubled. And we saw 2 events with more than 500 millimeters in 2020. The rise of sea levels creates an increase of sea levels. There are 2 factors that contribute to the rise of sea levels: the increase of temperatures, which causes a dilatation of water, and glaciers and polar calottes melting. Earlier, I heard the numbers of 3.6, but depending on the measures and the period, we reach up to 3.3 to 3.6 millimeters per year. Once again, this varies depending on the areas. Seas and oceans are not flat, so we can observe differences depending on the regions of the globe. Here you can see in Marseille, in this graph, a significant acceleration in the rise of sea levels over the past few years. With regards to increase of temperatures, if we reduce our emissions, we should be able to stabilize the increase of temperatures around 1.5 degrees. I'm not sure about 1.5. We are a bit more pessimistic, but we should be able to stabilize it around 2 degrees. However, with regards to the increase of sea levels, whatever happens, it will continue even in a 2.6 scenario, an optimistic scenario. It will continue to progressively rise up to 2,300. This is due to the fact that a lot of heat was stocked in the oceans. And even if we maintain the temperature at 2 degrees, the melting will continue. So the rise of sea levels was not stopped in 2100. It will continue for several years. Given the acceleration of the increase, this will obviously vary depending on our mitigation policy concerning greenhouse gases. Consequences of the rise of sea levels. Consequences on biodiversity. For instance, lithophyllum sidewall, so between air and sea, at waves level, consequences on biodiversity of humid coastal areas, which will have to face the rise of sea levels. It also contributes to the increase of saline intrusion phenomena. This increase and this rise of sea levels increases the surfaces that face risks of marine submersion and contributes to the acceleration of erosion on the coast. Regardless of the factors, climate change rarely is the only responsible for this phenomena. However, climate change has further impact than systems, ecosystems, or financial systems when they are under pressure. To summarize, climate change pushes where it hurts. So we need to limit the pressure on our systems to limit the impact of climate change. That's a map that I got from the BRGM website, where you can see the areas exposed to marine submersion risks. This was for the Camargue region with a sea level rise of 50 centimeters. Even at 50 centimeters, we can see that a lot of surfaces are impacted by the risk and an increased risk of submersion waves. Now, just a word on ocean acidity. As we saw it earlier, oceans act as a tampon for climate change. First of all, they absorb a lot of heat generated on the planet. And they also store 1/4 of the carbon dioxide emissions. Part of the carbon is sequestrated by the mangrove and also by Posidonia. In the South region, we consider we have 200,000 tons of CO2 sequestrated per year. That's a lot. But most importantly, for years, for thousands of years, Posidonia have been sequestrating carbon. Preserving Posidonia systems is a way not to release all this carbon. These are not just a few tons in the Posidonia. These are incredible quantities of carbon sequestrated by the Posidonia, and when they are degraded, the carbon is released. However, part of the CO2 sequestrated is dissolved, which increases the acidity of oceans. Since 1995, there has been a 10% increase in acidity. I have used the data available in databanks from Pangea. These measures come from Villefranche-sur-Mer between 2005 and 2018, where you can see clearly a reduction of the pH, so an increase in acidity. Acidification will have consequences on biodiversity. Very often, this goes in conjunction with the acidity. This is for the general impacts. Of course, I had to simplify and summarize, but these are the main challenges around oceans and seas. A few articles were released recently. I won't get into solutions, but an article was published at the end of last year showing that waters and oceans are surprisingly resilient when the right solutions are implemented. Here you can see the scale. When it's purple, the pressure is a maximum pressure. And if you look at the loss of habitat, the recently implemented policies reduced the pressure around the loss of habitat. Same for fishing. We can see that there is a reduction of the pressure on ecosystems. That's not the case for plastics and chemical products, where the pressure is at a maximum and climate change should continue to increase. We recommend a series of interventions that could be positive: protection of the species and ecosystems, restoration of habitats, developing responsible and sustainable fishing, reducing contamination, protecting natural areas, and most importantly, mitigating the impacts of climate change, that is reducing very quickly and drastically our greenhouse gases emissions to reduce and slow down the warming, global warming. Without this, all these measures will be much less efficient. Finally, I would like to mention a final article. Jean-Pierre Gattuso, who is a researcher in Villefranche-sur-Mer, who published an article quite recently around all the solutions and ocean-based solutions, which offer a lot of solutions. All the solutions are being assessed. They were assessed. And if you want to look into detail, nature-based solutions often are the ones that have the most impact in the long term. This is it for my brief conclusion. As part of the Grec Sud, we are going to try and simplify them and post them on our website soon. I will finish with one presentation where I included all the resources used for this presentation. Here you can see a summary for decision makers from the IPCC, the Grec Sud books, which targets the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region. And here you can see the MEDEC report released end of last year, which is a Mediterranean scale IPCC taking stock on the different challenges relating to climate change in the region. Thank you very much, Antoine. Thank you so much for this summary, which presents the overall challenges. Before the survey, I suggest, because we will do the survey later, we are going to take a picture. I invite you to turn your camera on. Mr. Roux came back with us for a word of conclusion to say goodbye. And then we will proceed with the assessment survey. Well, first of all, I hope that your message will not prejudice me when saying goodbye. So let's just say see you soon rather than goodbye. I left the preparatory meeting because I have a municipal council in just a few minutes. But first of all, I wanted to express my gratitude to everyone, all the participants. I'm not going to mention you all. I believe this day was very fruitful from a professional perspective. We talked about degradation, warming, erosion, submersion, affected coastline. We also talked about new management, new behavior, new gestures, especially around Posidonia meadows. And of course, all the topics that were covered by the specialists, the scientifics, all the speakers, which sometimes give us little hope. But fortunately, there are other solutions that arise from our discussions, and I hope that we will not necessarily need to use the next nudge. I understood this new approach. I'm trying to familiarize myself with it, which seems quite interesting, actually. The person next to me explained it to me again earlier, and it looks very interesting to encourage people to have the right behavior regardless of the different topics we covered today. So for all this, I would like to thank you. There are some important moments in your life as an elected representative. So I would like to thank the president of the region for letting me represent him in such an event. I would like to tell you that we'll see each other very soon. And as it was said earlier, it's a see you soon, not a goodbye. We still have a lot to do. We understood the difficulty of the task that we face, especially when I hear this last segment. I was happy to hear about the presentation around my area, this global heating that takes place every decade. But to be more serious, I also wait to hear, as Mrs. Ricard reminded us, about those new bills that will pass and that will cover climate and resilience. We never used that term so much up until now. Shall we be satisfied with resilience? I trust what I heard from the different scientifics, and I'm always mesmerized by such skills and knowledge. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
We can't hear you, Stephanie. Oh, I forgot to turn my microphone back on. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Roux. Just for the poll, if you can take a couple of minutes just to answer the questions for the end of the day. Thank you very much to each and every one of you for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon, hopefully in the autumn, for the second part of BMed Tea. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.